Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are taking on one of the absolute biggest legends of the 20th century, the Bermuda Triangle. We're going to bypass the rumors, ignore the ghost stories, and break down exactly what happens in this notorious patch of ocean using pure documented evidence.
So let's dive right in. What actually lurks in the waters bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico? For decades, you've heard the stories, right? Vanished ships, lost airplanes, and a cocktail of wild theories ranging from alien abductions to interdimensional portals. But as we pull back the curtain on the actual data today, you're going to see a reality that is far less otherworldly, but honestly, incredibly fascinating.
Section 1. The Catalyst of the Myth. To truly understand how this massive legend kicked off, we have to start with the very real, grounded human tragedy that launched it, the loss of Flight 19. Looking at the timeline from December 5, 1945, you can see exactly how things unraveled. What started as a routine training flight for 5 Navy torpedo bombers quickly turned into a nightmare. By 3:40 p.m., the flight leaders' compasses had completely failed, and pilots were arguing over their location. Fast forward to 5:30, the sun is down, the weather's awful, and they are running critically low on fuel. Then, at 7:04 p.m., we get that final, heartbreaking transmission to ditch the planes into the rough seas. And making matters infinitely worse, a rescue plane sent to find them exploded midair at 7:50 p.m. It was an absolute, utter disaster.
Now, here's where things get wild. Pulp writers at the time completely hijacked this tragedy. In the years after the disappearance, sensationalist authors basically overwrote the reality of these lost, disoriented navigators with totally fabricated dialogue. I mean, they literally invented quotes like, "They look like they're from outer space." But if you check the official Navy radio logs, the actual transmission was just a stressed pilot saying, "Both of my compasses are out and I am trying to find Fort Lauderdale." Real life, completely overwritten by sci-fi.
So when we look at the official Navy investigations, there's no Scooby-Doo reveal, no aliens, no sea monsters. The flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, simply got turned around. He mistook the Bahamas for the Florida Keys, so he kept flying his team northeast, thinking he'd hit the Florida Peninsula. Instead, he led them straight out into the open Atlantic until their fuel ran dry. And that rescue plane that vanished? It was a Martin PBM Mariner. Aviators literally called it the flying gas tank because its fuel lines notoriously leaked fumes into the cabin, making it incredibly prone to mid-air explosions. It wasn't a supernatural event, it was a devastating mix of spatial disorientation, empty tanks, and faulty equipment.
Section 2. Building a Pseudoscience Myth.
So how exactly does a mundane military tragedy turn into a legendary cursed zone? Well, it was built step by step over decades. In 1952, a writer named George Sands notes a few accidents. In '63, Vincent Gaddis officially coins the catchy term Bermuda Triangle. But the real explosion hits in 1974, when Charles Berlitz drops a sensational bestseller packed with Atlantis theories and heavily embellished details. Writers just started copying each other, ramping up the narrative, and completely ignoring the original facts. And even when researcher Larry Cush successfully debunked these claims in 1975, proving lots of these supposed shipwrecks actually happened in the Pacific or during massive storms, it didn't matter. The public was already hooked.
To try and rationalize this newly minted myth, folks started coming up with some pretty wild pseudo-scientific theories. A huge one was the idea that massive methane gas eruptions from the ocean floor were rapidly changing the water's density, making perfectly good ships drop like rocks. This idea got so popular, it was even famously tested in a middle school science fair project on bubbles and buoyancy. But here's the crucial point. Yes, if you pump compressed air or oxygen bubbles into a small fish tank, the density changes. And sure, a little plastic bottle might sink 13 or 14 centimeters. But taking a highly controlled bubble experiment in a tank and applying it to a sudden, massive, supernatural sea-swallowing event in the chaotic open Atlantic, that is a massive leap that just doesn't hold water.
Then there's the famous 1970 anecdote from pilot Bruce Gernon, who claimed he flew through this strange, tunnel-like cloud that actually warped time, getting him to his destination 30 minutes early. It makes for incredible TV on paranormal documentaries, but it completely lacks corroborating evidence. Science tells us he was likely just experiencing a visual illusion caused by unusual but perfectly normal weather, combined with a really strong tailwind.
Section 3. Fake News and Media Sensationalism.
Now, you'd think we'd have outgrown this kind of stuff in the modern era, right? But nope. Modern media absolutely loves leaning into the triangle for clicks and ratings. Just listen to this quote from climatologist Randy Cerveni.
A science TV network recently interviewed him and then deceptively edited his words to make it sound like he discovered mysterious hexagonal air bombs sinking ships out there. He literally had to go to the press to clear his name, incredibly frustrated that they completely misrepresented his data.
What the network actually did was take a standard global weather event called a microburst, which is basically just a powerful, localized column of sinking cold air from a dying thunderstorm, and completely rebranded it. They falsely packaged a totally common weather phenomenon as some magical air bomb unique to the triangle, all purely for entertainment.
Section 4. Natural hazards and human error.
So if we strip away the time warps, the fake quotes, and these made-up air bombs, what are the actual physical threats out there? Well, both the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and scientist Karl Kruszelinski will tell you the region is undeniably tough to navigate. You've got the Gulf Stream, this massive ocean current that can sweep a vessel completely off course in minutes and whip up incredibly violent storms. It's highly prone to sudden, brutal hurricanes. It's packed with a vast network of shallow, treacherous coral reefs. Oh, and there's evidence that it's one of the places on Earth where a compass points to true north instead of magnetic north, which can absolutely mess up a navigator who isn't paying close attention.
When you stack up all those intense environmental hazards, you really don't need a sea monster to explain a shipwreck. The U.S. Coast Guard puts it pretty bluntly. They are not exactly impressed with supernatural explanations. Between the fierce forces of nature, heavy sea traffic, equipment failure, and just plain human error, the ocean is more than capable of claiming vessels without any help from aliens.
Section 5. The statistical reality. 0. Let's step back and look at the cold, hard numbers for a second, because statistics don't care about ghost stories. 0 is the exact amount of extra money Lloyd's of London charges to insure a ship passing through the Bermuda Triangle.
Think about that. Lloyd's of London is the world's leading maritime insurance company. They use over 3 centuries of shipping data to calculate financial risk. If you sail into pirate waters, they charge you more. If you navigate known hidden reefs, they charge you more. If this area was genuinely an unexplained vortex of doom, you better believe they'd be heavily profiting from that risk. But they don't, because they base their premiums on actual statistical data, not myths.
And to back that up, massive shipping studies definitively prove the accident rate there is completely ordinary. In 2013, the Worldwide Fund for Nature did an exhaustive study of the absolute most dangerous shipping regions on the globe. Guess what? The Bermuda Triangle didn't even make the list. When you factor in the sheer massive volume of daily traffic passing between Florida, the Caribbean, and the Atlantic, the number of accidents is exactly what you would statistically expect.
Section 6. Why the myth persists.
So, if the science, the Coast Guard, and the financial data completely dismantle the legend, why are we still talking about it? The truth is, the Bermuda Triangle's greatest power isn't sinking ships, it's captivating our imaginations. Accepting human fallibility, that a highly trained pilot can just get lost, or that random weather can violently destroy a massive ship, is deeply unsettling. Supernatural mysteries give us a really entertaining narrative escape from that harsh reality. It proves that mystery easily thrives when we actively choose to overlook the facts.
So I'm going to leave you to ponder this question. If a myth this massive, spanning thousands of miles of ocean, can be built entirely out of misquoted logs, sensationalized books, and totally ignored statistics, what other modern myths are we blindly accepting today instead of looking at the data? Always remember to look past the sensationalism and seek out the structured facts. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you hear.